I think in the 1920s, Procter & Gamble gave them, in today's equivalent, like $30 million to, publish this research, or make and publish this research. And the only reason today that anyone even thinks that seed oils are food is a result of all this propaganda.
If you avoid corn due to it being GMO, full of mold and mycotoxins, or it's just hard to digest, enter corn back into your life. Today's episode, we are diving deep into how you can enjoy corn again, specifically corn chips, with the maker and co-founder of MASA Chips. Stephen Rofrano explains the differences between organic and non-GMO once and for all, and that even if corn is organic, it doesn't necessarily mean it's easy to digest and mold-free. Nixtamalization, say that 2 times fast. Have you heard of it, you guys? Well, that's what we discuss in today's episode and why you want it done to your corn to get rid of mold, lectins, and anti-nutrients. Plus, Stephen bashes Siete Chips at the very end, or should I say exposes what's really in Siete Chips. So stay tuned until the very end. Plus, I also have a code for MASA Chips if you want 25% off all their flavors. Use code LILSIPPER, that's LILSIPPER, for 25% off all MASA chips. This is a huge discount and one you'll be using over and over again. These chips aren't found anywhere else except online and 2 other small retailers in California, but they will ship them to you anywhere in the USA. Welcome a better Doritos back into your life. I bet you didn't know that magnesium is needed to detox heavy metals. It helps the body alkalize during detoxing, which counteracts the acidity that can occur as toxins are released. Magnesium also helps activate enzymes involving detoxification, aids in bile production, and can reduce oxidative stress, which not only hinders proper detoxification, but oxidative stress has been shown to be the root cause of countless other illnesses. So if you can get that under control, then you may get to the root cause of many health issues instead of just putting a Band-Aid on them. Sadly, most magnesium supplements only contain 2 to 3 versions, but Bioptimizers contains all 7 forms, conveniently all in one easy-to-swallow capsule. Bioptimizer's Magnesium Breakthrough is soy-free, gluten-free, vegan, and the best part is that Bioptimizers has a 365-day money-back guarantee. That's an entire year. You can try this product, and if you're not satisfied, you'll get your money back. So if you want to try this all-natural, full-spectrum magnesium supplement with an entire year at no risk and experience better sleep, better bowel movements, and overall better well-being, go to bioptimizers.com/digest for an exclusive offer and use promo code DIGEST at checkout to save 15%. I have a question for you all. What's antibacterial, antimicrobial, anti-inflammatory, contains antioxidants, improves oral health and digestive support, and contributes to wound healing? If you guessed Manuka honey, then you're absolutely right. Every time I talk about Manukora honey from New Zealand on my Instagram, I always get messages from my followers telling me how much they appreciate me introducing this ancient healing honey to them and their family. A little goes a long way, and this honey should be saved for medicinal purposes, not baking into cakes or cookies. It's something I always have in my pantry because it never spoils, ever. And a tiny teaspoon daily is all you need to get the endless benefits both internally and if you apply it externally on your face for breakouts or even burns, its potent healing powers work wonders. Manukora honey contains 3 times more antioxidants than your typical sweetener and the special antibacterial compound called MGO. The higher the MGO count, the more of these antibacterial compounds exist in the honey. It's hard to find Manuka honey with an MGO above 500, but Manukora guarantees an MGO of at least 850. Now it's easier than ever to get Manukora honey. Just head on over to manukora.com/digest to save $70 on their starter kit, which comes with an 850 plus MGO Manukora honey jar, 5 honey travel sticks, a wooden spoon, and a guidebook. That's manucora.com/digest to save $70 plus $25 worth of free gifts. That's manucora.com/digest. Okay, Steven. So if anyone has not heard of MASA Chips, where have they been? You are the creator and founder of MASA Chips, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And so before we even get into the interview, I like to start my podcast with some rapid fire yes or no questions, and you can only answer yes or no.
Oh boy. Okay.
Okay. There's only 3. Ready?
Yeah.
Okay. First question. Is all corn hard to digest?
No.
Mm. Is organic corn still difficult to digest?
Depends.
Depends. Okay. I want to get into that. And then thirdly, is yeast extract the same as MSG?
Yes.
Ooh. Okay, that's like a huge myth buster because like there's 2 people on one side of the line. So let's get into that. But why don't you introduce yourself and let my listeners know who you are and what you do?
Yes, I'm Steven. I am the co-founder and CEO of Ancient Crunch. We make MASA Chips, Vandy Crisps, and soon to be more and other uh, tallow fried, animal fat based, traditional method made snack foods that are more delicious than the junk foods and healthier than any health foods that you've ever experienced.
And they are so incredibly good. I just tried the Carbonero. I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
Yeah.
This is like the newest flavor of MASA chips, and they literally taste like a spicy Dorito. And if you guys haven't tried it, you guys have to. But
That was the idea?
what like perked your interest? Like, how did you get started into creating MASA chips? Because was it like, oh, I want to create this brand, or was it kind of like just by accident?
It was definitely more by accident. So I had been personally a health nut, as they say. I've been a health guy for about 8 or 9 years by the time the idea for Masa even came around. It started when I was in college, and I discovered at that time the paleo diet was super popular. It's like 2014. So I started doing that, realized like, hey, I feel a lot better when I eat well, so I should do more of this. And then continued to explore and learn everything about nutrition and health that I possibly could. Over the years, I was doing keto. I did all the fermented foods, and that was the thing. I started learning how to ferment stuff. I made sourdough bread for several years. I made kombucha and kefir, and I made pickles and sauerkraut and all these things. At one point, even when I was still in college, I was like sprouting broccoli seeds and quinoa, doing all of the very obscure health things and learning as much as I could in order to help myself feel better. Because as a kid, I had nothing crazy, but a certain amount of health problems that made that were kind of annoying to deal with. So learning that I could fix a lot of that stuff just through food, it was a very, I guess you could say, empowering sort of realization. And there's so much depth to how much you can optimize food and nutrition. Anyway, so that has just been my personal hobby and passion for a while, and I always thought I would start some kind of business, and I had tried to do I had other business ventures outside of health specifically prior to this. But at one point, I basically was making fun of one of my friends for eating seed oils around 2021. And he was eating like Tostitos or something. And that conversation, one thing led to another. Basically, by the end of it, he challenged me to make tortilla chips that he could eat, that I would eat, that were good. And that was the impetus for Masa. Honestly, it was like kind of a dare. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna make this. I'll show him. You can have tortilla chips that are like healthy but also taste good. And that sort of turned into us realizing that, hey, this thing tastes so good and satisfies such a large need for healthy snack foods that are made with real ingredients that we basically had to start selling them. And so we did. And that the first day that we started selling Masa Chips, it went super well. And then I was like, okay, I should probably work on this more. And a few months later, I quit my full-time job, and I've been doing this ever since.
Wow. Okay. I have to know, where did you first sell your chips at?
It was on the internet. It was on our website, masachips.com. The first store that Masa was ever sold at is called Fermentation Farm. in Costa Mesa, California. Probably 3 days after we started selling online, they reached out and we found out about them. And they were like, "Hey, do you guys do wholesale?" And within a few weeks, I was seeing videos of our chips on shelf there, which is pretty cool.
That's amazing. Yeah, I'm very familiar with that place. And I know that Erewhon sells them as well.
Mhm.
So you didn't go to like a farmer's market first. You just went straight online.
No, there's no farmers market. I think the online is great if your product is non-perishable and therefore can be shipped. It's by far the best place to start selling any CPG product. If any of the listeners have similar ambitions, I would wholeheartedly recommend it. Um, but yeah, if you had something more fresh or like it was meat or ice cream or whatever, the farmers market might be the only way to get started.
Yeah, that's a really good tip. Because I know there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there and they're just kind of
Hmm.
wondering uh, how to go about this. Like, do I pay for the space at farmer's market? Is it worth the time? Like, yada, yada.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, just
so,
think about the size of the country. There's 300, 400 million people in it. Let's just say, no matter how obscure your niche is, there's at least 10,000 people who probably want what you're selling, even without ever even hearing about it first. They're like, "Oh, yep, yep, I want that." Um, how many of those live in your town and go to your farmer's market? Like five, maybe.
right, maybe.
So like I would think about the online marketplace as just like a farmer's market that the entire country goes to. And so because the pool of potential customers is so large, the chances of you finding people who want what you're selling is way better than any other in-person distribution method.
Yeah. I mean, you can just find it with a quick Google search.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So
Okay. So, what's the deal with seed oils? Because there's this huge controversy I mean, a lot of my listeners are very like anti-seed oil, but there's
mhm.
still those that are like, no, it's been debunked, blah 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 blah. So, can you give us like spill the tea
Yeah.
on that?
Yeah, the acetyl controversy, and it's funny you call it a controversy. I find it very interesting because, like, if you were around 150 years ago, it just wouldn't be controversial. That's a fact because there could be no alternative point of view because they didn't exist. Right? If you're some people are like, oh, what's better, beer or wine, or is alcohol bad for you? Like people have been talking about this for 10,000 years, I'm sure, or at least several thousand. Is bread good or is bread bad? Like you could have that argument at any point in time in the past several millennia, but you literally could not have a position that seed oils were good for you 150 years ago because they were not even a thing. So it's like you're telling me that people who never ate this food item in all of history, it was literally invented and then promoted because of the needs of the soap and cotton industries, which I'm happy to explain about, turned into somehow marketed as food, and then that product is not only not bad for me, it's somehow better for me than the fats that all of my ancestors have been eating since the dawn of time. It just doesn't even make any sense. So the whole comments about the cotton and the industrial industry, a lot of people don't know this. Seed oils go back to the like right after the Civil War when a series of patents were filed by a few inventors in order to process and extract oil from cotton seeds. And the reason why this was a thing is because cotton production was a big deal at the time in the US. And cotton seeds get filtered out of the cotton fibers and they're kind of useless. They don't really do anything, they're just a waste product. And so if you're a big cotton company, you would want to look for a way to minimize your waste or at least make some money off of your waste. And so for a long time, people thought, oh, let's get the oil out of cotton seeds, which they successfully did in the 1800s, but the resulting product was kind of gross and like sticky and smelled weird. No one, it was just not edible, and no one was like even trying to sell it as food. It had a few uses in other industry and whatnot, but still, because it was like gooey, it made for poor use case in industry. So that kind of hung out for half a century until Procter and Gamble bought a patent by some German engineer from the Midwest, I believe, who had figured out a way to turn liquid cottonseed oil into a solid fat and like refine it in a certain way. And Procter and Gamble, of course, was interested because they made soap, and you need oil or fat to make soap. That's like what the core ingredient in soap making is some kind of fat. And so they were very interested in this because, like, hey, there's this thing that cotton processors are throwing out. If I can turn this into oil that I can use for my soap, my cost of ingredients becomes very cheap. So they bought the patent for this process, and this is called hydrogenation, which anyone here, I'm sure, is familiar with hydrogenated vegetable oils. That's what that is. It turns the liquid fat into a solid and other refining procedures. And so Procter & Gamble not only, they decided, oh, we could use this for soap, but like, hey, this might actually make a good replacement for lard, which was the most commonly used animal fat in the US at the time, along with tallow and butter. So they marketed this as Crisco in 1924. I believe it was first sold, maybe 1918, I forget. And it was popular for a variety of reasons. And then during World War II, the seed oil industry, such as it existed, was purely to create like literal industrial lubrication for the machinery of World War II. So Canada had rapeseed oil that was used in their machinery. The US, I believe, had corn oil. And so there was these certain farm subsidies paying farmers to grow these products to make this oil so they could use it for these industrial, like, military industrial complex purposes. The thing is, after the war ended, you had all these farmers and you had all this infrastructure making all these oils, and you didn't need, there was not as much demand for them from an industrial standpoint. So people thought, hey, how could we sell this to other markets? And that's when they decided to sell liquid vegetable oils to consumers. Prior to like 1945, liquid vegetable oils were just not sold. Crisco was sold, solid fat, right? But if you look at all the advertising and the history of these companies like Wesson Oil, Mazola, all these things, they just weren't a thing in the consumer market prior to World War II. And that kind of stuck around. Procter & Gamble, and of course the other companies spent a lot of money convincing the American Heart Association to publish research and adopt this whole heart healthy whatever label. I think in the 1920s, Procter & Gamble gave them, in today's equivalent, like $30 million to publish this research, or make and publish this research. And the only reason today that anyone even thinks that seed oils are food is a result of all this propaganda. So it's like, I don't even want to sit here and like argue about studies, because like you have your studies and I have my studies, but that's a game that could just go on for hours, right?
Well, and I love that you brought up the American Heart Association, because I always laugh when I see that stamp on like
Yeah.
Cheerios or Quaker Oats. And I'm just thinking, okay, for those that are actually believing that these things are good for you, they're literally glyphosate sprayed,
Mhm.
and you're just ingesting all of that. And it's just, people don't realize that you even have to pay for that stamp for it to be
Yeah.
on your product.
Yeah, it's like a trademark. It's not like some
Yeah.
objective claim about facts. It's like McDonald's trademarked "made with real beef" or something.
Right.
It's like, it's not a true statement about a thing. It's a trademark slogan. Like, what?
It is. And I mean, people, with the whole marketing thing, I'm sure you've seen it thousands of times. It's like the way that they word things. It's like freshly cracked egg. Sounds really great. Okay. But is it like free range? Is it
Right.
like, you know what I mean? Freshly cracked or hand scooped guacamole. I'm thinking,
Yeah.
oh my
People
God.
focus. This is a very good point. People focus on these like completely irrelevant things that sound nice, and it's like, okay, I'm not saying I don't want my eggs freshly cracked, or I don't want my
Right.
guacamole hand scooped, but of all, in the grand scheme of things, is that the primary thing that matters when we're talking about the quality of an egg or an avocado?
Right. Now, I get this a lot too, and maybe you get it too, is the difference between a seed oil and the seed that it comes from is
Mhm.
completely different versus corn and corn oil. They're like,
Mhm.
well, you use corn, but
Right.
I thought corn oil is bad, but it's completely different.
For sure. Yeah, it's I mean, there's plenty of like metaphors of this, but this the principle of concentration, right? You take a thing, and then there's one tiny element of a thing, but then you get rid of all the other things, then you just have an abundance of that one element of a thing. So a lot of people who say sugar is bad, like they would probably not tell you that eating fruit is bad, or that chewing on a sugar cane is that bad. But when you take away the fiber and you take away the plant nutrients and you take away the water and all these things, you have this concentrated product that is available due to industrial processing in levels far higher than we would otherwise obtain. Another good example is alcohol. Prior to the 1600s, distilled spirits like vodka or rum or whiskey didn't exist. They were invented in the 1600s. And prior to that, all anyone ever had was wine or beer or some kind of equivalent. And in those recipes, the alcohol percentages are actually very low. So when you read about people in the Middle Ages drinking all this beer, or in ancient Greek times drinking wine, not only was the wine weak, they also mixed it with water. Like, so they drank a lot of wine, but the wine was weak and mixed with water. And so, like, yes, is ethanol toxic in large doses? Of course. But if you're having like weak wine diluted further with water, is that like a toxic exposure of ethanol? Unlikely, right? And it's the same thing with seed oils. If you eat corn or peanuts or sunflower seeds or whatever, you'll eat a handful of them and move on with your life. But if you were to eat sunflower oil, for example, that is the equivalent, like a tablespoon of sunflower oil. I don't even know what it is. It's something like several dozen pounds of sunflower seeds, like, are the equivalent amount of oil as 1 tablespoon of sunflower oil, right? So it's like if you think about your seed oil consumption, oh, I don't eat that much of it. Well, you're eating like truckloads of some seed worth of oil per year is what you're eating.
It's insane. And then to top it off, these oils do oxidize and go rancid.
Yeah.
So it's just it's a double-edged sword there.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
to your point,
the oils are, and people say, oh, but you could cold extract a seed oil and not heat it up and not use hexane and not like do all this stuff. Another thing is the deodorizing process requires that the oils be heated to about 800 or so degrees in order to get rid of the smell and other chemicals, because it literally just breaks them apart like molecularly. So even if you buy oil and you're like, oh, I just used a salad dressing or something, it's already been heated to 800 degrees. Like, you're already screwed, you know.
okay. So
When you
then what
make
about cold
tallow,
pressed?
when you make olive oil, you don't heat it at all. And when you make tallow, you heat it to like 180 degrees, right? Sorry, you said what about cold pressed oils?
I was just about to say like cold pressed olive oil or, avocado oil.
Yeah.
Why choose beef tallow over those olive oils for your chips?
So olive oil is not bad. Olive oil is not actually seed oil, and people confuse the two because like there's plant oils and there's animal oils, right? Those are two separate circles on a Venn diagram. They don't overlap, obviously, because it's a plant or an animal. But seed oils are not all plant oils are seed oils. Olive oil, like the olive is a fruit. And so olive oil comes from the fruit part of the olive and not the seed, which isn't the pit that you spit out. Avocado oil comes from the fruit part of the avocado. Not that it's great, and I'm happy to talk about that, but it's a very different thing than taking, like, you don't take the avocado pit and squeeze the avocado pits to get oil. That's not what people do. So it's a fruit oil is one way of defining it, as opposed to a seed oil, which is like the sunflower seed, or the seed of the rape plant, which is what goes into canola oil, or the seed of the safflower, or the whatever it is. Those are seeds, and the reason why this is a difference that matters is because the seed oils tend to have higher concentrations in them of polyunsaturated fats, which are the unstable fats that oxidize and cause all this damage that everyone's going on about. Whereas the fruit oils tend to have more monounsaturated fats, which are still liquid at room temperature, but they do not break apart as easily. And then, of course, on the other end, the animal fats tend to have more saturated fat, which is the most stable type of fatty acid you could have. And so,
Is that why you chose beef tallow?
yeah, that is one reason why I chose beef tallow. The other reasons, there's several why it's, and again, I'm not saying tallow is the answer to everything. It's just the best fat for many things, but in particular, deep fry. I would not put beef tallow on my salad, for example.
Touche.
Yeah, but it is the best fat for deep frying because I'll just list off reasons. First of all, it tastes the best. If you were to compare deep fried tortilla chips in all these oils, the beef tallow one just literally tastes the best. It's domestically sourced, as opposed to having to import coconut oil or palm oil or something, avocado oil from like some third world country far away and paying to ship it and doing all this stuff and deforest a rainforest somewhere. Every single state in the country produces beef, and therefore beef tallow is inherently local. Now, I'm not saying all the beef tallow we get comes from New Jersey, where our factory is, but it is sourced from places that I could drive to, right? So the local sourcing is important. So it tastes good. The other thing is animal fats tend to produce a less greasy fried product, which is ironic. Like, that's surprising to most people. Surprising to me. Most people think that, oh, animal fat, beef, steak, greasy, whatever. But because the fatty acids are longer than the equivalent fatty acids that would be in a plant oil, they're longer and larger and bigger molecules, so they kind of stick together more. and they don't, for example, like get into the pores of your fingers and in between your fingerprints and whatever. Like if I had a deep fried corn tortilla chip, which I've done before and I've tried, you'll get coconut oil grease on your fingers just by eating a few of them. But if you had a beef tallow fried chip, which MASA chips, of course, are fried in beef tallow, people often remark at how surprised they are that their hands are not covered in grease by the time they're done eating because the oils are not as thin and runny and greasy. So that's another that helps with just the experience of eating the product. But then the last major issue with beef tallow is that it has more fat soluble vitamin content than pretty much any other fat, especially the plant fats. There is actually, it's ironic, there's not a ton of vitamins in plant fats. People say, oh, plants and polyphenols, whatever, but there are content of vitamin A and vitamin D and vitamin K, conjugated linoleic acid, and other fat soluble vitamins that are mostly found in animal products are not present in an olive oil or an avocado oil. So yeah, that's why I use beef tallow. It's just the best.
Thank you for saying
Yeah.
that, Stephen, because I think a lot of people have misconceptions about beef fat tallow specifically. And then, like you said, the polyphenols and antioxidants and like olive oil is great. I love it. But I think there's room for both.
Yeah, of course. Time
um,
to place, right? Um,
right.
Avocado oil, I will say, is a little sus though because so much of it on the market is fake. Um,
That's what I've been hearing.
yes, yeah, very very famous or infamous, depending on who you ask. Like UC San San Diego, I think UCSD, yes, University of California, San Diego, did a study a few years ago. They went to the shelf and bought like every avocado oil they could find, and then tested them. And I think over 80% of them came back as either being fake or rancid or both. Fake meaning laced with lower quality seed oils, or rancid meaning the oils that oxidized and gone bad, which is unsurprising given that the avocado itself is a very wet fruit, and the avocados being used to make avocado oil, even if you're like not doing anything illegal and like lacing it with something, um, the oil accelerates the oxidation of the fat. And so these like half rotten avocados that have been sitting around because they weren't able to sell them to hipsters in Brooklyn for $3 a pop, those go into avocado oil making. And so you have this like sort of half rotten avocado where the water, the wet avocado is like rotting in there. And then you try to extract the oil. So that's my theory for why avocado oil is so low quality, which is very different from if you think about olive oil. The olive oil in the industry, like or in Italy, the olive oil industry in Italy or Greece or Spain or whatever, like they're growing those olives for the purpose of making olive oil. And anyone who's making olive oil like has their olive orchard. I've been to several. They have their olive orchard. They harvest the olives and they're still unripe, so they're not that wet. Like that day, by the end of the day, they're already bottled in the olive oil is already extracted in bottles. They're not like sitting around for a while because they're harvested for the purpose of making the oil. Unlike avocado oil, which is an accidental benefit you get when you make too many avocados that you can't sell in in Whole Foods.
Yeah. Well, my friend Tony from Casandrinos, he's the owner. I don't know if you're familiar with that olive oil company. And they harvest like once a year for
Mhm.
their olives, and they make and like you said, they harvest it, hand pick it, and then it's bottled that same day.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
amazing. But I know even olive oil can be suspect
Also
for a
true. Yeah,
lot,
low quality
you
olive
know?
oils are more likely to be also laced with other bad oils. Depending on the country, some are better than others, and there's certain labels to look for and certifications. And so, yeah, we certainly don't buy random low quality olive oil, but the industry is much more mature. That's the other thing. Like people have been making olive oil for several thousand years in the Mediterranean. If you talk to any person from Mexico and ask them about avocado oil, like they'll be like, "What? Like we didn't
Yeah, it
use
is
that."
pretty fairly new to
Yeah,
the game.
like no one used avocado oil, even in Mexico, even in places where there were avocados. No one used avocado oil prior to the last maybe 2 decades at most.
I think they used beef tallow in
They
Mexico.
use lard. They use a lot of
Yeah.
lard also. Beef tallow too. But like especially in rural parts, pig farming is very common, and they use a ton of lard. Actually, one of the best compliments I ever got about MASA Chips was some guy who talked about how when he would go to his grandma's in some rural Mexican village as a kid, and she would make homemade tortilla chips, she would obviously fry them in lard because that's what they had. And he said the MASA Chips tasted like that, and I thought that was very cool.
Poop, constipation, and diarrhea is something that can be a taboo topic, but we all have experienced it in some shape or form. No pun intended. But seriously, the way our poop looks, smells, and the frequency we do it is key to measuring our gut health. But that's not the only way to measure. If you suffer from acne, poor immune system, brain fog, even depression and anxiety, these also are signs and symptoms of poor gut health. In fact, studies are now coming out that our gut microbiome is linked to obesity and type 2 diabetes. Now, the first thought of action for most would be to take a probiotic, and they do help, but with so many on the market and so many conflicting opinions, it's hard to decipher which one is the best and the best for you. I have always been a proponent of Seed's Daily Symbiotic, which is a soil-based probiotic that doesn't need refrigeration and can survive your 98.6 body temperature. Because if you think about it, if a probiotic needs refrigeration, how will it survive once you swallow it? Seed's DSO1 Symbiotic Capsule is a probiotic and prebiotic all in one, which means there's actually a capsule within a capsule, and the contents are released at different times in different areas of your gut for optimal benefits. Not only has every ingredient in Seed's capsule been scientifically tested individually for their safety, dosage, and benefits, the DSO1 special formulation has been evaluated as a whole. So it's something you can trust that's backed by science. So support your gut, skin, brain, and immunity with Seed's DSO1 Daily Symbiotic. Just go to seed.com/digest and use code 25digest to get 25% off your first month. That's 25% off your first month of Seed's DSO1 Daily Symbiotic at seed.com/digest and use code 25digest. Okay, I have a question. How come I can digest your organic corn tortilla chips, but not other corn tortillas, despite the other corn tortilla chips still being organic? So they're both organic, but yours are easy to digest.
Yes.
Can you explain what you do?
Yes, absolutely. So it's a good observation. And this is just to take a little step back here. Health and all this stuff is just so freaking complicated, right? Like we were saying before, oh, freshly cracked egg or like hand peeled avocado or whatever. It's like there's a million attributes just for one specific type of thing that matter as far as its quality and digestibility and everything else is concerned. And so no one knows all of them for everything. And it's like, it's crazy how much you have to actually learn to even be able to like go out and get a sandwich. I was saying this before. I was on a meeting and my wife brought me a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I had not eaten a peanut butter and jelly sandwich in 15 years. And the reason why I happen to be eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich for the first time in 15 years today is because at the farmer's market, there's this like regenerative farmer that does strawberries and they turn them into jam without any, it's just like sugar and strawberries. There's no weird stuff. It's like fresh. Obviously, it'll go bad in the fridge in a week. So we found the jam. We got this organic sprouted peanut butter, which is super hard to find, or soaked peanuts, and organic peanuts was very important because that makes peanuts more digestible. And also two ingredients, right? Most peanut butter has oil and salt and sugar and all these. Well, salt's fine. But so yeah, I had good peanut butter, and we happen to have good bread because we go to the bakery where they make. It's one of the very few small number of bakeries in the country that makes bread the right way, and they have organic, freshly milled, ancient grain, sourdough bread that's like does not have any weird additives, which is all the checkboxes you have to just for bread, right? And because I happen to have all these three things that are on paper very easy to find, but in actuality almost impossible to find all in one place at one time, I was able to have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I'm like, that's the work I have to go through to have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
To make a childhood favorite, yeah.
Like this is true about everything, whether it's the peanut butter, the jelly, or the corn. And so aside from the organic just refers to whether or not the corn is grown with certain pesticides and chemical additives. So obviously we should not be doing that. So you have organic corn. But even then, corn is a seed. And as such, it has certain anti-nutrients and nutrient inhibitors in it that make it hard to digest in its, sort of plain state. So just like you soak cashews before you eat them, or you'd ferment flour to make sourdough bread before you would eat that. For corn, the version that's been handed down from the people that basically invented corn farming, the Mesoamericans several thousand years ago, is this process called nixtamalization, which takes the corn and you boil it in with crushed up limestone, calcium hydroxide, which is an alkaline substance. You boil it for like 45 minutes and soak it for like 8 hours. And after you do that, then you rinse it and then grind it into a dough. And then that dough, which happens to be called masa, is then squeezed into, flattened into tortillas and then baked. And that's how you get a tortilla, a true tortilla. But you have to do that whole process because that whole the whole time it spends boiling and soaking and the alkalinity of the solution, it does a number of things to the corn that improves its digestibility, including getting rid of the harder outer cellulose shell, which on corn is very hard. Anyone who's eaten corn on the cob knows that you poop this stuff out the next day. So it sort of dissolves that up. It changes certain enzymes that makes them easier to digest, like proteins. It gets rid of phytic acid, other mycotoxins that are often present in all grains, including corn. And it also makes vitamin B. Crap, which one is it? Vitamin B1 or
B3, I
B3?
think.
I think you're right.
I think it's vitamin B3.
Vitamin B3, yes. So corn has niacin, which is vitamin B3, but that niacin is not in a format that can be absorbed raw because of, again, nutrient inhibitors, which are common in seeds, as I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with. So by doing this process, the vitamin B3 becomes digestible. And this is actually a problem with European settlers in the South who would eat corn as the Native Americans sort of shown them. But they didn't do this whole process of nixtamalization, which is obviously time and energy intensive. And a lot of them developed pellagra, which is a disease of vitamin B3 deficiency. And eating grits, eating the cornbread, whatever, without nixtamalizing it, if you eat too much corn and you don't have vitamin B3 from other sources, you can develop pellagra. So yeah, I mean, that's what happens when you just eat normal corn. I don't personally eat unnixtamalized corn, just like I don't eat bread that is not sourdough. It's just like, this is a necessary thing to do to make that substance digestible. And many people have tortillas where they claim to do some out of nixtamalization. There's a lot of shortcuts that people take that don't actually do this process, just like commercial yeast in bread is like a fake version of fermentation. In the same way that there's many tortillas that are not fully nixtamalized, and so they are not as easy to digest, even if they are pesticide free.
I love that you brought that up too about the yeast in bread, because if you don't know, if you see yeast in sourdough bread, there's no need for added yeast in sourdough bread. It naturally should have it. So
Right.
if you're grocery store shopping, like, this is just a side note, if you turn your sourdough bread around, it says yeast in it.
Yeah.
It's not true. It's not
Sourdough
really
bread.
fermented.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's marketing. Yeah.
Yeah.
At
Brilliant.
most, sourdough bread should have 3 ingredients, but at most it should have 4. It should be flour, water, salt, maybe sourdough starter. But the thing is, sourdough starter is literally flour and water.
Right.
So
Right.
I already listed that, so really the sourdough bread should have flour, water, salt, and that's it.
Speaking my language. And yeah, and I don't even eat corn either. Like, I don't eat corn on the cob or like anything. And so I was really hesitant to try the chips because, of course, corn. And I heard good things about it. And once I looked into it and heard the process that you guys do, I was like sold. But what would you say to the notion that corn is full of mold regardless of how it's prepared?
Um, so it's true that most grains have, that's what mycotoxins are.
Mm-hmm.
It is true that most grains in storage and in production develop mycotoxins. It's like this dry thing; it's kept in the dark, whatever. Uh, the boiling and soaking in the alkaline solution for 8 hours, that's one of its benefits, is it inhibits and washes away the mycotoxins. So that's what I would say to that person. Yeah.
I love it. All right. So I had asked you about MSG and if yeast extract is the same. And you said yes.
Yes. And the reason is because there's a billion types of yeast. Anyway, MSG is one of those like, oh, processed food ingredients. How could you? I have a healthy thing. I would never eat MSG. That's what they have at like the crappy Chinese restaurant down the street to make their food addictive. Fair. I don't make a habit of going out of my way to consume MSG. But yeast, a certain type of yeast, make MSG. That's just what they do. Like, I don't know what type it is, but we could easily Google this and find out. And so, what companies do who want to appear healthy, but they want the flavor and addictive benefits of MSG, what they do is they go and get yeast extract, which is like, what is the extract? Oh, it's the MSG that they made, but because it's an extract of yeast that happens to be MSG, food labeling laws allow you to just say yeast extract. Um, so then this is commonly found in vegan snack foods because MSG creates this umami savory flavor that is like it's one of the big it's very present in cheese. It's one of the reasons why people love cheese and cheese is so addictive. But if you're making a vegan cheese flavored popcorn or chip, not to name any names, but we all know brands. I would name names, and we would all know what those brands are that use this. You'll find, of course, this vegan queso, whatever, blah 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 bullshit, and it invariably always says yeast extract because they can't get the cheesy, addictive feel without either real cheese, of course,
Yeah.
or
And may I
MSG.
also add nutritional yeast as well?
As far as I can tell, it's the same thing. Yeah, so it's just like I get to add this thing that happened to have some other thing, but because it's something else that I actually put in my product, I get to use the name of the yeast extract without having to put the name of the chemical substance which is actually present in it.
Yeah, I know. Food labeling laws, they just crawl under my skin because I cannot stand them. Even I heard if you see the word spices and it's not necessarily like a specific spice, just says spices in the ingredients, that could also be yeast extract or MSG.
Um, I don't know about that specifically, but it wouldn't surprise me. Um, I there's definitely rules the FDA has for what are you're allowed to put into something that's catch-all labeled as spices, but it certainly would not surprise me that MSG is one of them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
Well,
mean, unless every single and what brands will say is like, oh, we don't want to list them all because we don't want to give away our recipe. It's like, dude, come on. There's way more to having a successful company than some recipe that no one else knows. Like Coca-Cola could post the recipe for Coke on Twitter tomorrow, and people would still buy Coca-Cola because it's Coca-Cola. You know, so that's just a coping mechanism. If you don't see every ingredient listed on the label, you should question it certainly. But also the problem is there are things that you don't have to put on the label. So if you so that you can find like uh, frozen like chicken tenders or something. And I remember on Twitter someone was like, "These types of chicken tenders don't have seed oils in them." Oh, I can get them seed oil free and I'll buy them and bake them in my oven. And then Seed Oil Scout, I believe, or someone called Tyson or emailed them and found out that they are flash fried in soybean oil for 12 seconds. But because of, again, FDA labeling rules, apparently if you fry something in an oil for less than 12 seconds, and then you don't have to put that oil as an ingredient list, as an ingredient on your ingredient list. So yeah, you got to be
it
careful.
is it's so stupid. And I mean, I'm curious to know your take on natural flavors because your chips don't have natural flavoring. And I think that,
Well, we have natural flavors, but not
well,
natural
yeah,
flavors.
yeah. I think
Flavors that
everyone
are
knows what
natural.
I'm talking exactly. Like you list the actual flavors or the spices on there. And to my, I would argue that natural flavors are more addicting than sugar. And here's my argument, and I'd love to hear your take. But when do you ever put sugar in a glass of water and say, "Oh, that's good. I'm going to drink it"? No, it's the flavor of something. Like there's sometimes there's no sugar in a savory item, but there's natural flavors, and that's what keeps bringing people back for more and becoming addicted to that natural flavored item. But what's your take?
So, I mean, that's a very interesting point. I think it is certainly true that sweetness by itself is not fully satisfying. That makes a lot of sense. Because if you think about sweetness in nature, it's present in some food that has some nutrient in addition, citrus or whatever thing. And so it works with the other things to make you addicted because it's good for you. But when you just extract it, it doesn't. That's very interesting. I hadn't thought of that. I think natural flavors, as a catch all, could refer to a variety of things, some of which are probably okay, many of which I'm sure are toxic. I believe just a few things I know of. So vanilla is expensive. It comes from Madagascar. It's the bean pods from like some tree. Um, very expensive. And so there's two ways to make vanilla that are not from the actual vanilla plant. One is this synthetic substance called vanillin. Catch the end there, vanillin, which is like a petroleum derived chemical that happens to look similar, aromatic chemical that happens to look similar to the vanilla molecule, but of course it's, fake and whatever. But and so anyway, if that were in a product, that would be listed under artificial flavors, or it would be spelled out vanillin. But some genius decided to GMO bacteria to make vanillin. But because it's a bacteria and bacteria are natural, the vanillin that is derived from a GMO bacteria that makes vanillin is considered a natural flavor. And so you could have natural vanilla flavor that's actually GMO bacteria produced vanillin. Maltodextrin is another thing that often ends up lumped in together with natural flavors, even though it's not a flavoring agent on its own. But it's probably because it's a sub-ingredient in a lot of other quote-unquote natural flavors. For example, lime juice powder, or a lot of juice powders of any variety. Mike's Hot Honey is another one. I don't know if you heard about this. In order to dehydrate honey properly, you need a 4-to-1 ratio of carrier to honey. So if you have I actually don't know if it's measured in mass or volume, but whatever, similar enough. If you take 4 grams of maltodextrin for every 1 gram of honey and mix it together, there's now enough powder in that substance to be able to be dehydrated and then turn into a powder. So if you ever see honey powder or honey in a chip or whatever, it's like people said, why can't you put honey in? Well, you can't put honey in a chip because you can't dry out honey unless you put some weird powder in, and a common one is maltodextrin. And so it's probably the case that a maltodextrin honey powder would be considered natural flavors. And so you could be sneaking in just shit tons of maltodextrin, excuse my language, in the honey powder or the juice powder or whatever it is, and you wouldn't have to list it at all, and it would be caught up in the natural flavors. So there are many specific examples that are just super sketchy. I'm sure we could find more.
Have you heard of the coconut milk powder?
No,
have you heard of that one?
That?
So same thing as the maltodextrin. It's like if you see coconut milk powder in a latte mix or protein powder, or sometimes they just sell it as coconut milk powder, it has to have maltodextrin in it.
Right.
There's no other way that you could dehydrate coconut milk into a powder without the maltodextrin.
Right. But the crazy thing is that they're not obligated to say, by saying it's this thing powder, they are now free of the rule to have to put maltodextrin on the label somehow. It's absolutely insane. Here's another really interesting one. We've been trying for a long time to have a salt and vinegar potato chip. Obviously, it's delicious. But every vinegar powder that exists has maltodextrin or similar carrier powder in it. Because if you you can do this at home, do this yourself. If you try to dry out vinegar, it just evaporates. If you take some white vinegar and put it on the stove and boil it to get a powder or something, the vinegar will just go away. You'll be left with nothing. So you just can't dry out vinegar. We bought every vinegar powder you could possibly find, even the ones that don't say that they have maltodextrin in it. You find out that it has maltodextrin in it. There is a supplier of vinegar powder who claims to have a carrier-free vinegar powder, which should be physically and chemically impossible. But they claim it, and they emphasize, nope, no maltodextrin, no carrier, whatever. So we were trying to work with them. I was like, okay, this is great. Can we use this? I tried to talk to them and ask them how they make it, and they won't tell me. So what we're going to do, though, is because if it's possible, if they're not lying, that's great. We're going to buy this stuff and send it off to a lab and figure out what is actually in it. If they won't tell us, I'll just find out, asshole. Come on. So then we'll see. But and again, I'm not trying to name names here, but there is a company I know of that is selling potato chips with this vinegar powder, and they emphasize how maltodextrin free it is. But they nor anyone knows what's actually in it as of yet. That's
interesting.
Such craziness.
That should be a red flag, you guys. I always encourage people, if you think about how something got from one place to another, and how did it get there? I always talk about citric acid, and my followers know that I am always no citric acid because it's derived from black mold, and people just get on me about it. They're like, "Oh, you're fear mongering," and you're like, "Just look it up. Look how it gets
Yeah,
Like there's no
97% of whatever it's made from black mold in China. I mean, the thing is like the labeling laws again. The rules are like if I have water in my recipe, I just put water. But like water is not all the same, right? Sure, it's 99% H2O, but this water has more phosphorus, and this water has maybe this is loaded with arsenic. Maybe that water is chlorine. Maybe that one water is fluoride. This water might be high in magnesium. This water might be low in magnesium, right? Like none of that makes its way onto a label when you see the word water. Like if you buy a juice or a soup or something, it's just water. Maybe they say filtered water. Filtered with what? Filtered out. Filtered what's out of it, what was in it, you know, just like, oh, it's citric acid. Okay, like that's because the mold made the citric acid and they scooped it up and they refined it, whatever. But what residues are in the citric acid? That's not making its way to a label. Just like your pesticides, the glyphosate is not part of the label. you know, after they sprayed it on the corn, right? That doesn't make its way onto the label, but it's there. And so, while I generally think the nutrition facts of products are completely worthless and not even worth looking at, in my opinion, um, and happy to talk more about why they're a scam. But like for practical advice for the person buying food in a grocery store, I would not even look at the nutrition panel. The ingredients list is very, very important, but even still, it's not everything for all the reasons we just described. The ingredients list will not tell the full story. And so you have to have some other reason to know about the product or trust the what they publish on their website or other things they say on the package. The ingredients list is not the full story because you have to like again, it does not list every physical chemical substance that made its way into that box. It's impossible to be fair, but it's not. It's a good place to start, but it's not everything.
Oh, Stephen, you are my people. Like, this is why I feel so good when after I eat a MASA chip, is because I'm like, dang, I don't feel like hungover or like weird afterwards.
The bloating,
And you're
yeah.
right. Yeah. And honestly, the term natural is like thrown around so much. When something is natural, they just automatically think it's healthy. And I'm always like, well, yeah, snake venom is natural too. Are you going to put that in your body?
But also true, but also natural. Um, People use the word with a very imprecise definition. Um, right? Natural flavors. We just talked about that. What natural should mean is that every aspect about the thing could have been made and could have been produced like 200 years ago. That's what natural really means. So, is corn natural? Like, yeah, but like you got to be more precise than that. The growing methods, the soil it was in, the pesticide use, whatever, like all of that together, like there's plenty of corn I'm surrounded by. There's a lot of corn grown in New Jersey. That's not natural. It's grown from the dirt. It's right there. Ooh, natural, nature, green, whatever. No, it's not natural because of the chemicals they put in it. And yeah, I'll explain. Like for MASA chips, if I had a time machine and I was transported back to 1775 and I had a like cast iron kettle, which is commonly available at the time, a knife, maybe I had a few cows, I grew some corn, um, and I had some like wood for fire, I could make MASA chips, right? Very simple. You know, I go kill my cow, butcher it, cut up the fat, throw it in the kettle, like render it into beef tallow, put that off to the side. Um, then I go and like harvest my corn, shuck the corn, boil it in my water in my kettle with maybe I found some limestones, so I crush them up to make calcium hydroxide. Stick that in my water, boil it, let it soak. Then I rinse it, and then I get other stones and I grind it up into a paste. And then I have my tortillas, and then I put my tallow back in the kettle, and then I get up to 350 degrees. And then I throw my tortillas in the kettle and I pull them out. That's MASA chips, literally MASA chips. Like I could get in a time machine. Maybe this is when they invent time machines. This will be an ad that we run. I'll get in a time machine, go back to 1775, and I'll make MASA chips. Obviously, we don't do all that literally today. But nothing in the chemistry has changed, right? The object, like the mechanical part, the fact that I have a bigger fryer and it's made of stainless steel because it's easier to clean and all these other things, that is obviously different. But everything about the inputs and the process is the same. And so that is what the definition of natural should be. And the reason why the corn that I'm surrounded by in New Jersey in 2025 is not natural, because if I send that farmer back in a time machine and said, hey, go plant this field, he'd be like, well, where's the ag way for me to go get my pesticides? Right? He couldn't do it in the same way because that technology, in this instance, the chemical technology, did not exist back then. Therefore, it's not natural. And so GMO bacteria producing vanillin exists. No, not natural. Did anyone have maltodextrin in their pantries in the early 1800s? No, therefore not natural. So I think when you have that definition of what natural means and you apply it all the way down, tracing it all the way back to the seed and the dirt and everything else, then that's a good working definition of natural. But even still, of course, snake venom, obviously.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, anything. I joke about it. I'm like, oh, well, yeah, my dog poop, that's natural. I mean, technically, but I'm not going to,
Depends on what your dog eats, doesn't it?
yeah, true. That's true. I've seen some weird stuff come out. No, I think, can you do us a favor? Can you briefly explain organic versus non-GMO? Because I still think there's people out there that are confused and they think they are the same.
Yeah, it's very simple. All organic is non-GMO, but not all non-GMO is organic. GMO specifically refers to the artificial process of gene editing as used in agricultural technology today. Whether that's like the golden rice that they try to put beta carotene in rice to give it to grow it in Asia to feed to give kids that were going blind from vitamin A deficiency, which is completely not how that should be solved. But whatever. Or it's like editing the gene of some apples so that they don't turn brown, when exposed to air. Even though the apple's oxidizing, they just change the reaction so it doesn't produce something that looks brown. The same degradation is occurring. Or they're they're editing the genes of corn to be more resistant to the type of pesticides that they put on them. This is like scientists in a lab going in and like modifying DNA. That's what GMOs refer to. GMOs do not refer to like the farmer selectively pollinating certain plants to make a variety of flower or of rose that's more red or whatever, all the varieties of apples. Technically, those are genomes that did not exist several hundred years ago, but they were not done in a laboratory, right? They were just cross-pollinated and bred by farmers and botanists and whoever. So there's a whole discussion about that to be had, sure. But GMO specifically refers to the artificial laboratory gene editing of like food products. All organic foods are required to be non-GMO, at least as far as the current organic standards, depending on how good of a job or bad of a job our current agricultural secretary does. That could change, I'm sure. But as of right now, organic means non-GMO. But the thing is, organic also means a prohibition on an entire class of chemical additives, processing agents, sanitizing agents, pesticides, fertilizers, and other things that may or may not be used in the GMO context, or that may or may not be used in a product that's non-GMO, but you wouldn't know just by the label of non-GMO. So, in summary,
so hopefully that clears the air.
Yeah. In summary, like, because people will say, "Oh, we use organic corn," and they'll say, "Hey, is the corn non-GMO?" Yes, it's organic. I couldn't call it organic if it were GMO'd. So organic implies non-GMO, but when you see non-GMO, it's just like a less rigorous. I'm not saying it's bad, right? But it's like a less rigorous standard of cleanliness in chemical exposure than
it's like
organic.
you can have a non-GMO product, but it's still sprayed with glyphosate.
Absolutely. Yeah. That being said, in many contexts, they would use less glyphosate because if they use more, it would kill the crop. And that's why, so this is the thing, what people understand why GMOs are bad. There's a certain person who I think rightly says that GMOs are bad, but they don't actually know why. And if you ask them, they'll be like, "Oh, it ain't natural" or something. And then there'll be annoying people on Reddit who are like, "Well, actually, blah, 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 everything's natural, So actually you should go eat GMOs. Like, whatever. And then the person who doesn't believe in GMOs can't really argue against them, and they're annoying. But whatever, they're right. GMOs are bad, but it's because of what is being modified. Like, that's why they're bad. No scientist is sitting around saying, "Hey, let's like make this apple have higher polyphenol content and like more vitamin C or something." Even if they did, I wouldn't trust it, but whatever. That's not even their stated goal. Their stated goal is like, "Hey, how can we make this apple survive whilst we dump even more toxic chemicals onto it?" Because, hey, apples all these chemicals that we want to put on our apple trees are killing all the apple trees. Why don't we make the apple trees resistant to the chemicals so we can put even more on them and feed that to people, right? Every GMO is GMO'd with the intention of increasing its pesticide resilience, meaning that the plant can carry more pesticides than are consumed by you without the plant dying. That is why GMOs happen. That is why they're there. And so, yes, they're not. They're done purely to increase the amount of pesticides and other toxic chemicals that can be applied on the fields, and therefore the toxic and pesticide exposure that you, the end consumer, are exposed to.
Thank you. Thank you for that explanation. I hope that everyone listening now is a bit more clear on organic versus non-GMO. And I hope everyone listening also understands and knows why MASA Chips and Vandy Crisps, they are a little bit more on the pricey side than your even typical, quote, healthy brands out there. And I think you just explained within this hour why. It's because you guys actually care and go through a process so you don't take shortcuts.
Mm-hmm. That is certainly true. I mean, there are plenty of chip companies, quote unquote healthy chip companies, that have a lime flavor, for example. We already talked about how lime powder is maltodextrin. Go look at their labels. Go look at I'm not going to, again, name names, but find the quote unquote healthy brands that have lime flavored chip. Actually, no, I will. Screw them. They sold to Pepsi, so I can. Siete, for example.
Yeah, there you go.
I can talk shit about them now. So they have a lime flavored chip. And I'll tell actually a little story because I think it's interesting. So our first flavor was original, obviously, just salt. I honestly thought that was all we were going to do because I'm a pretty plain kind of guy. I don't like flavored stuff, but people kept saying, "Oh, you have to do flavors. You got to do flavors. You got to do flavors." Okay, I'll do a flavor. What's the common flavor of tortilla chips? Well, lime, right? Tostitos, hint of lime. Siete Chips is a lime flavor. Everyone has a lime flavor. It goes with salsa, whatever. So I'm like, okay, cool, we'll do lime. So we got the bags, the colors and the stripes, and we got the bags designed, all this stuff. And then I was like, wait a second, don't we need lime flavoring? How are we going to go do this? So I started looking for like organic lime powder, and every single thing I found had maltodextrin in it. For the reasons I just mentioned, they basically squeeze lime juice onto a tray of maltodextrin and then dehydrate that. And so what you get is like dehydrated lime juice soaked maltodextrin, and that's your powder. There are other ways of achieving this flavor too, but like there's no one that just had a lime chip made with limes. And I was like, well, why can't I just put limes in it? Obviously, limes are a fruit; they're wet. Chips, you need a powdered seasoning. So I was like, well, if that's what Tostitos does, okay, cool, fine. They suck. But what about Siete? I looked at their label and it was citric acid and lime oil. So it's like there's no limes. There's literally no limes in the lime chip. It's citric acid from black mold to make it sour, and then the hint of the lime aroma coming from lime essential oil, which is extracted God knows how. There's no limes there, right? It's just so crazy. And like I just emphasize this again, like the lime chip has no limes in it. It's like Beyond Meat has no meat in it. It's like this up is down. Like, what are we even doing here? Why are we even calling it lime? So I had to resort to buying organic limes from some local health food distributor, washing them. We sliced them by hand in a deli slicer, and then started dehydrating those slices. Like you go to a fancy bar and they have little lime wet like slices that are, that. We were making those by hand, and then dehydrating them and grinding it into a powder, and that was my lime. That was my lime flavor. So yeah, that is how much effort we go through. I think we pay effectively, including all the costs, whatever. We pay about $40 a pound for lime powder. Salt, for context, is like $1 or $2 a pound, right? I think the sketchy lime powders that you go buy are probably $2 or $3, $5 a pound, maybe. But yeah, $40 a pound is a very, very significant difference. And that's just one example. Obviously, we have other spices and other things that are very costly, and other ingredients. But yeah, those are the lengths we have to go through to actually deliver like real food. And some people are like, oh, but Siete is cheap. Well, yeah, citric acid and lime oil.
Yeah, well, and I've never actually, the only Siete chip I've eaten is the salt.
Yeah.
The flavors I've stayed away from because I've looked at the ingredients, and like the cheese one has nutritional yeast.
Yeah,
I'm
they're
like,
big
okay,
yeast
no,
extracts. Because they have
Yeah,
vegan
I'm
cheese
not.
flavors. Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeast extract, whatever. And then, of course, the citric acid with the lime. I'm like, okay, no. But I really appreciate that you just go the extra mile to not compromise. Will there be a new flavor coming up?
Actually, yes. So we're doing a Hatch green chili masa flavor.
Okay,
So Southwest people
everyone,
may
stay
be
tuned.
familiar. The Hatch Valley, New Mexico, is like home to a very famous type of green chili. That's a big deal. And so yeah, we're doing a Hatch flavor. It's kind of like habanero, slightly less hot, but the flavor profile is very different. It's much more like Tex-Mex, Southwest, as opposed to Doritos. Like there's no tomato powder, for example. I don't know how to describe it. I guess I'll try for yourself.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I can't wait for that to come out. Everyone listening, if you do want to try MASA Chips, my code is Little Sipper, LILSIPPER. You can get 25% off. So go. I'll put that link in today's show notes. So you can go and try all of their amazing chips. Once you try, you will not go back. Steven, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. Thanks for your time. You're always welcome back.
Thanks for having me, Bethany. It's been great.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Digest This. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review in your podcast app to let us know. If you're ever wondering how you can support me and this podcast, sharing it with your friends and family is the best way. This is a Wellness Loud production produced by Drake Peterson and edited by Mike Fry. To check out more shows by my team, go to wellnessloud.com, and to email the show, message us at digestthispod@gmail.com. See you next time. The content of this show is for educational and informational purposes only. It is not a substitute for individual medical and mental health advice and does not constitute a provider-patient relationship. As always, talk to your doctor or health team first.
Are you ready to rock middle age? I'm Dr. Tina Moore, Gen X truth teller and holistic physician. On the Dr. Tina Show, one of Apple Podcast's top alternative health shows, I share what actually works for metabolic health, hormones, and strength, backed by decades of clinical results, not trends. From loving the gym and hitting your protein goals to peptides and microdosing GLP-1s, it's all done the right way, not the hype way. Because menopause doesn't have to suck if you're fit. New episodes every Thursday, produced by Drake Peterson and Wellness Loud.